Drake and Josh's final episode was meant to be the TV movie Really Big Shrimp, but due to syndication order disputes between Nickelodeon and the showrunners, 2 other episodes, Helicopter and Dance Contest, followed Really Big Shrimp, serving as the final episodes of the show's 4-season run from 2004 to 2007. Since Really Big Shrimp was written as the series finale, I think it's worth analyzing to understand what the show has to say as its final message. In typical TV finale fashion, both of the lead characters seem to finally get everything that they've ever wanted, but the series makes a point to end on a scene of the 2 brothers fighting, an homage to a scene they shared back in the Amanda Show, and then transition to that original scene as the final shot of the series. In this video, I'll explore what the significance of that final shot is. So a little backstory on why I'm even making this video. Drake and Josh was an all-time favorite of mine growing up. It aired at just the right time in my little boy life, with new episodes premiering up until I turned 12, and the show was constantly rerunning on Nickelodeon for years. It was a great show, and as I age and wither and slowly die, I find myself thinking of some of the great things I enjoyed as a wee lad. So I decided to revisit the series a bit before watching Really Big Shrimp. I wanted to get back into the groove of things and ended up watching 12 regular episodes from across the 4 seasons before watching the finale. I'll get more into the specifics of that finale in a moment, but I just want to say that the show generally does hold up. I mean, it's not as funny as it was when I was a kid, but that's generally the case with a lot of things since part of me died when I turned 17, but I did get a couple of chuckles watching the episodes that I did, and I think all the premises, characters, and acting generally works and still serves as an excellent kids show. Probably the best live-action kids show that I've ever seen. Now that I'm done talking about myself and my ego is quenched, let's move on to them shrimp. There isn't too much you need to know for the setup of this TV movie. Honestly, it starts out just like any other Drake and Josh episode, and that is something I found a little odd about this at first. Generally, with a finale, I personally expect a little more grandiosity from the get-go, but you could have turned on this episode and not known it was anything special until you realized it was double the length. That kind of goes along with how the episode is structured as well. Things don't really feel too much like they're beginning to wrap up these characters until the second half. Part of me wishes this finale was paced out a little better, but at the same time, that's my adult brain with exposure to the last decade of prestige TV talking, and how I am now was certainly not the target demographic for the series in 2007. Anyway, things kick off normally with the classic talk to camera scene where Drake and Josh are both filling in the audience on their thoughts. I thought it was a really nice touch that the pair both start their monologues the exact same way that they started their monologues in the very first episode, talking about their homework. The monologue doesn't remain the same though. After those homage beats, the pair begin talking about how Drake tends to always get what he wants. Drake then mentions that he thinks Josh's luck is about to change, and the 2 comment on how they can always count on things turning out unusual but okay whenever they get together. This isn't the most concise monologue ever, but I thought it was worth looking at. In a way, this final monologue serves as both a setup for this episode in particular, but a comment on the relationship of Drake and Josh as a whole. This is something I'll come back to. So the plot picks up with the gang at the premiere movie theater where Josh works, with a nice little shout out to Miranda Cosgrove's upcoming show iCarly listed in the front. Josh eats Crazy Steve's enchilada while they are working to get things set up for Drake's upcoming performance to impress a record producer. You ate my enchilada! Soon after, we also find out that Helen, the manager of the premiere, is getting married and is going to be stepping back from her duties a bit, so she'll need to hire a new assistant manager, a position that Josh has wanted since he first started working there. Are you starting to notice those classic finale tropes yet? The things both our heroes have always wanted are now suddenly within their reach, but can they grab them? Naturally, since Drake is the best musician ever and the world just doesn't realize it yet, he impresses the record producer enough to get an offer. So Drake and Josh drive out to LA, where Josh serves in the capacity of Drake's manager, where they are offered a deal to use Drake's song for a Super Bowl commercial. While Drake is in the recording booth, Josh is asked to sign a contract by the record producer, but finds himself distracted by some really big shrimp. Out of his element, distracted, and overjoyed with Drake's success, Josh signs the contract without reading it, and hence we have our inciting incident for the drama of the story. Of course, it turns out that the record company was granted full creative control over Drake's song from the contract, and they've bastardized his original song into some auto-tuned trash that should be played at every grungy hipster club across America. The realization that Josh signed the contract without reading it, and thus gave the record company full legal authority to alter the song, infuriates Drake, and he gets very angry with Josh. The conflict between them and how both seek to overcome this situation serves as the driving force for Drake's entire story, while Josh balances his brother's anger at him along with his ex-girlfriend Mindy's return into his life, now in the coveted assistant manager position at the premiere. At this point, our heroes have fallen from all-time high to a perceived all-time low, and their relationship is on the line. This is not the first time Drake and Josh have gotten into a relationship-straining fight. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find an episode where they don't fight, which again, I'll come back to shortly. There are some other side stories going on, but just for the sake of speed, let me rush through to the conclusion. Josh feels he has to make things right with Drake and goes to confront the record producers only to find himself with an opportunity to switch out the bad song for the good song, which he takes after a prior conversation with Drake about Josh needing to learn how to play dirty to win. This results in the good song being played on the Super Bowl ad and the brothers reconciling. However, pretty much immediately following Drake praising Josh's actions and saying, "You have learned something from me," Josh receives a call from the record company, threatening legal action and a cost of $5 million with potential for 2 years of jail time. So not great. Luckily, after worrying about this situation for a couple of days and a confrontation between Josh and Mindy, which results in her confessing her feelings for Josh, the pair are summoned back to LA, where it is revealed that Drake's song was so good that they won't be pursuing legal action against them, and in fact, Drake gets offered a record deal. From here, we proceed to Helen's wedding at the premiere, which of course is interrupted by a fire, resulting in the wedding having to take place in the parking lot with all the core cast and main supporting players present, which also acts as the conclusion to Josh's arc, getting him both the girl and the promotion that he's always wanted. The show can end right here. Everyone's journey is wrapped up, and everyone has ended in a much better place than they started. But that's not where this story ends. The show has one more scene, which takes place in the boys' iconic shared bedroom. The bedroom has been taken over by Megan for the majority of the episode due to Helen's mother staying in Megan's bedroom. Kind of unimportant, but this is the first real look we get at the boys' bedroom, as it should be in this finale, symbolizing that things are settling back to normal despite the craziness of the last few days. It is then revealed that the record company sent over boxes of the really big shrimp that had mesmerized Josh so much earlier in the episode, but Megan and her friends left only one shrimp for the two of them. Drake and Josh go from celebrating their successes to quickly fighting for that final really big shrimp, a scene that continues until it transitions to a younger Drake and Josh from a scene in The Amanda Show, where the pair find a shrimp on the ground and begin to fight over it using the same lines of dialogue that were just repeated by their older counterparts. With that final look at these two characters, at these two actors across two different shows, the series ends. But why? What is the significance of this ending? Why did the writers feel the need to center this finale around shrimp as a way to set up this final scene? I believe it is because Drake and Josh, despite all their growth and change, are destined to fight like this forever. This final scene got me thinking about another Drake and Josh episode, one that stands out in my memory because of how unique the premise was to my young mind, and that is The Foam Finger. The Foam Finger is a Rashomon-inspired episode, which finds both Drake and Josh realizing that they had gotten into a fight long before they ever officially met, 8 years ago at a Padres baseball game. The main conflict of the episode has the two boys both blaming the other for the fight that they got into following Drake's purchase of the final foam finger from an eye-patched vendor. Josh tells his version of events, which puts the blame on Drake, and Drake tells his version of events, which puts the blame on Josh. It is only after Megan finds the eye-patched foam finger vendor, who has put in the work to move up to selling bobbleheads now, thank you, that the true unbiased story comes out. The fight was due to a misunderstanding started by a young Megan who threw a cookie at Josh's head, but Josh thought it was Drake who thumped him. So why am I bringing up this episode? Drake and Josh fight all the time. That's kind of what the whole show is about. Well, that's pretty much my point, the Foam Finger episode's point, and I believe the finale's point too. The Foam Finger episode ends with Drake and Josh reflecting on their constant bickering over the years, then the pair imagine if they'll always fight like this, and we transition to a likely fictional flash forward. In this future world where Drake and Josh still live in the same room together but are comedically old, we see that it doesn't take long for the pair to get into another argument and then, prompted by an elderly Megan, get into a downright fight, and the episode then ends. This ending serves almost as the mirror opposite of the finale's ending. Instead of flashing back to when they were still fighting but younger, this episode shows us what the future could hold for these characters and how it isn't too dissimilar from their present nor the past shown at the Padres game. Personally, I think it's pretty clear that the show is trying to tell us that Drake and Josh are destined to fight like this forever. So is this story a happy ending? The show certainly plays the fight up for laughs, and it is meant to be a touching homage to the show that started the actors' careers and kick-started the show that they got to headline together. Obviously, this is a kids' show, and the ending isn't meant to be looked at too deeply, especially not through some dark, dramatic lens from some twisted YouTuber 14 years after its debut. However, I do think that the message of Drake and Josh goes beyond that they are just meant to always fight forever. Think about a typical Drake and Josh episode. A fight usually ensues based off of the differences between the two leads, but by the end of the episode, each character is better off for the conflict. Look at classic episodes like Movie Job, Who's Got Game, and especially Josh Is Done, which all show the brothers in an intense conflict, but ultimately, they both learn something from that conflict. In Movie Job, Drake gives up the assistant manager position at the premiere following a major mistake from Josh because he realizes Josh only made that mistake because the job means so much more to him than Drake. In Who's Got Game, Drake and Josh compete to see who can get the most dates. Josh is given a massive confidence boost, and Drake wants to give up his playboy ways because he met a girl he really likes. Finally, in Josh Is Done, we see the boys maybe at their lowest point. After Drake leaves for school without Josh to make out with a girl before class, Josh misses his chemistry exam and afterwards declares he's done with Drake. Drake insists that it won't last long because Josh needs Drake, but as the episode goes on, we realize that actually Drake needs Josh more, and Drake confesses as much, which leads to Josh finally accepting his brother back into his life. Even in this finale, Drake and Josh got into a pretty big fight. It was heated enough that Drake didn't want to talk to Josh anymore, but at the end of the day, both of the brothers were able to overcome their problems and grow as people, ending up better off after the fight than they were before it. If you look at their fights as catalysts for growth and change, then the idea that Drake and Josh are fated to fight forever isn't a negative outlook for the show to end on at all. In fact, it goes to show that although these two characters' lives may be changing and they are moving on to bigger and better things, that ultimately they'll both still be there for each other. Even if they don't necessarily want that to be the case, but it's better for both of them to engage in these conflicts because in the end, it brings out the best in each of them. One of them will always be there to pick the other up when they're down. So just turn around. Sorry, I could not resist, and actually I'm not sorry. This brings me back to the monologues that started the finale off. Both Drake and Josh are reflecting on their relationship across the entirety of the show in this scene. It starts with an homage to the first episode, then quickly moves into describing what the characters' dynamics have been for most of the show. Drake is the lucky one, and Josh has to work hard to get what he wants, but this little section ends with Drake foreshadowing that Josh's luck is set to turn around soon, which by the end of the episode, things certainly seem to be looking up for Josh. However, the final lines of these respective monologues are as follows.
And the one thing I can always count on,
But one thing I know for sure,
whenever I hang out with Josh,
whenever I get mixed up with Drake, things always turn out
unusual.
okay.
The scene is played for a laugh, but I think there is nothing but truth to what they say. Whenever these two characters get mixed up together, things certainly can get unusual. But at the end of the day, after all the fighting, the two of them come out the other end and things are okay. Drake and Josh may be fated to fight forever, but because of how they support each other and help each other grow, it's all gonna end up unusual, but okay. And in a finale, when we are saying goodbye to these beloved characters, can we really ask for anything more than that? I think this is a very touching ending and a nice send-off to these characters who were a large influence on myself and an enormous amount of kids from my generation. So that wraps up my thoughts on the message of Drake and Josh's finale. What do you think about the idea of these two brothers being fated to fight for all time? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Also, if you want to see me tackle another nostalgic topic like this one, please leave me your recommendations. I was even toying around with making a video on the other Drake and Josh TV movies, so if that interests you, let me know. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it, you may also like these other videos on your screen now. And until the next time, I'll shut up